How's it going, everyone? It's Derek Lamoureux, and in this video, we're going to break down a spot that Nick shot for a company called Casino Time. Nick, give us the context of what this spot's all about.
So Casino Time is an app where you can gamble online. Big takeaway for their messaging they were trying to get across is you can do this gambling with friends online. And you can do it from anywhere. So in this scene, she's talking about how she misses her friend, and her friend is actually the Sasquatch that she can now gamble with on the app. So later on the ad, when she turns this picture frame around, it's her with her 3 friends and a Sasquatch.
All right, I like the comedy tones to this ad. Let's talk about this location here, because when I look at this kind of still, the first thing that comes to mind is there's 2 giant windows, and if I know Nick, he's not usually one to shooting with windows in the background.
Yeah, so in general, I think it's tougher to balance windows that are directly on the back plane of your frame. Director for this one really wanted that kind of like Wes Anderson-y symmetry look, and that's a big part of Wes Anderson's look. So I had to embrace that on this one, which I like how it looks. It just goes against my initial instincts, but like that's a good thing about creatives is sometimes they'll push you into a zone where you're having to like think differently than what you natively fall into.
Now, this scene here, is this a practical location? Are you in a studio?
Nope, this is a real location. And so what we did here was I had my production designer bring in curtain and shears. So I knew we had something to light up to catch the light. So we had, I think, 2 1200s, one coming through each window, both kind of at an angle coming in frame right to left. And that actually gave like the kind of like double edge light, which I don't hate the look of here, like kicking on the back of our main talent's face. I don't know if I do this in every scene, but like it helps the symmetry. I don't hate it here. And then once I kind of like balance my camera to having those windows at like 80, 90 IRE, so they ride high in the waveform, I'm kind of like, all right, this is a silhouette. This is not going to play for this ad. We have to fill in our subject's face. So you start having to make a choice like, well, which side do we bring the key in? For here, the choice was made for me because right here there is a wall. So if you're asking why I brought in the key frame right when both my motivations are coming in, the real answer is I just had more room to work on frame right. So that's where I brought in a dyno through an 8x8 of full grid, egg crated off, and that's what's helping give that Rembrandt lighting, the eye light, and help like filling in our 3 subjects' faces there.
Now, with these lights both being outside, how did you mitigate kind of double shadows or anything, of that nature coming in from outside?
We used some flags on the light, so it was kind of like I used siders on our 2 1200s to make sure that each window was only getting one source. And then I had them coming in at like a frame right to left angle. And then even within inside, I had a cutter off frame right. So like this little accent on the couch, this accent across the chest, like all of this is brought in with either 4s of 60, like something smaller with a cutter. So it's meant to be motivated from like that light could be traveling from back there, but realistically a light would never wrap around here and go around their chest. So yeah, you're living in this like, well, I'm setting myself up for the close-up when she turns around so we can see the photo. I want that hard light as a little accent to be like, oh, now when we go to that close-up, I can make that shot interesting.
So you're thinking about, okay, I'm gonna get a close-up of this picture frame because I know that in the boards, but I got a light for this giant wide. So I'm setting myself up.
Yeah, so if I didn't have this accent light here in the wide, once we get to like this on the photo shot, all I have is a soft source. And that's less interesting to me. That's not as fun, that's not as contrasty. So like now when I think of a scene, I don't think about it as a one-shot basis. I think of it as like, well, what's my lighting setup that's gonna travel through to all the coverage?
We've got our motivation coming through the windows here. We've got our key light coming in from this side here.
Yep.
What are the lights that are taking place in this scene?
Just the one accent coming across the body here, which would have been a cutter here. I would have had an egg fill around frame left, V'd out from camera, and then this practical here would have been an Astera or an aperture bulb or something that we set to warm. Other than that, like little tips I would say is like we brought in like this table frame left to just like add another layer in the foreground to like make it feel 3-dimensional. We brought this chair in. Like you're just trying to create as many, like we were probably 10 feet away from this wall here. So you're trying to figure out like, well, how many layers can I squeeze between me and that back wall? Because your subject is maybe a foot away from the back wall. there's not a lot of depth there. So
Yeah.
if I can't create depth behind my subject, I can create depth in front of my subject and at least create some visual interest there.
About that depth is these things are a little bit darker than your subject themselves. So again, you have that light, dark ratio.
Yep, and I would say good practice with your foreground elements is have them go to darkness, and if you can, give them a back edge. So if you see on and we didn't bring in an extra light for this, but the way the window light travels, like you're seeing an edge around this whole chair, you're seeing an edge around, like you're giving even your foreground elements three-dimensionality, rather than just having them be a silhouette. So like you'll even notice in a lot of my work, if you're shooting something on a table and I'm going over the table, like I'll add a back edge just to the table in the foreground to give it that one little glowing halo of rim light on it, because it's another area of that light to dark to light to dark to light to dark.
So what's the most important thing in this image to you that people, take away from this with?
Don't be afraid to shoot into windows, but understand that like they are tougher to balance. So set your camera where you want those windows to sit in your scene, and then make sure you're bringing in the appropriate fill light for whatever story you're telling today.
What was your camera white balance set to for this scene?
It was probably, this one seems warmer, so probably 5,000 Kelvin.
5,000. So playing around with that white balance just a little bit in between each scene.
Yeah, it might have even been 5,600 Kelvins, because like that daytime's reading is more daylight to me, and they would have been 50. So probably daylight balanced on this one.
So 5,600 for this scene here. And then just setting these lights to around
Daylight.
5,600.
So those are coming in more true daylight look. And then I might have gone a little warmer with the practical and a little warmer on the slash. So it kind of lives in that world of like maybe the sun's bouncing off a yellow wall or something interior that could like send it. So like once again, not having everything at the same color temperature feels real to me. Like having things bounce off surfaces that like, even if you're looking at my hand here, like the color on my hand changes if we're close to this yellow table. Like the little imperfections feel real when light's bouncing everywhere.
So note to self, play around with color temperature, play around with the fixtures in your scene, and just know that not everything needs to be quote unquote perfect or the same. Thanks, Nick, and thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you tap that subscribe button, and we'll see you in the next video.